So, good evening to you, and I'm going to introduce the members of this committee, but I'll start. My name's Councillor White, John White, and I'm chairman. And the other councillors taking part, and I'll ask them to introduce themselves separately. Councillor Alexander. Councillor Baker.
Good evening, Chairman.
Councillor Fowler.
Good evening, Chairman.
Councillor Guglielmi.
Good evening, Chairman.
Councillor Harris.
Evening, Chairman.
Councillor Placey.
Evening, Chair.
And Councillor Wiggins.
Good evening, Chairman.
Now, the officers helping us tonight are the Director of Planning, and we have the Solicitor and Monitoring Officer. We've got planning officers and committee staff. As usual, public speaking will be in the order of the officer introducing the application to show any photos or videos of the site. Then I'll ask the applicant or his agent if they wish to speak. This will be followed by any members of the public who've asked to speak for or against the application. And that would be followed by town or parish councillors and finally the ward councillor. So it's procedure as normal. Councillors will then have a chance to question the officer. Once the questions have been answered, we shall go into general debate, and then after a short time, we'll call for a proposer and seconder, and we'll vote in accordance with our normal rules. Should any member of the public like to follow this meeting, it can be found on the internet by logging on to www.tenderingdc.gov.uk/live meetings. And I turn to the officers to see if we are live. And there seems to be a picture on the screen, so I'm taking that indicates that the meeting is now active. So let us turn to item 1 on our agenda, apologies for absence. And although I haven't had any apologies from Councillor Codling, he's not present, and I do not have a deputy for him. So we now turn to item 2, minutes of the meeting of the 24th of November. And again, I haven't received any notification that there are errors or omissions in them. So I look to the committee. Can I sign them as correct, please? I can. Thank you very much. Item 3, declarations, either pecuniary or personal. Yes, Councillor.
Chairman, just to say that I've received email correspondence from Ardleigh Parish Council with regard to this. However, I'm not predetermined.
Chairman, I also received correspondence in the form of an email from Ardleigh Parish Council as well. Thank you, Chairman.
I think from the hands going up, we all were lobbied by them. So thank you for that. And on one of the applications, should just point out it's... Sorry. Yes, sorry, Councillor.
Sorry, Chairman. I was going to say that I'm the ward councillor for Alsford and Elmstead, and I'm not predetermined on the Thorrington agenda item.
Thank you very much. On one of the items, it's item A4, just point out that this is an application from the coach company that we use on all our site visits. So it just needs drawing to anybody's attention that that is the case. Right. No. Questions to the chairman under procedure 38? I haven't got any, which means immediately we can turn to the application for 21/01/891 full. This is Primrose Hill, Radness, And I believe Alison is going to introduce this for us.
Thank you, Chairman. This application is for the change of use of a former forge building to a dwelling of 1 bedroom with associated parking and private amenity space. The site plan, which is shown here, is on the outskirts of Rabness, the village of Rabness, south of the village at the bottom of Primrose Hill. It's about 700 metres from the railway station, which is within the centre of the village, and about 25 metres away from a bus stop locally on the crossroads there. Okay. The aerial view here shows agricultural land to the south and the west of the site, and a wooded area, which is the ancient woodland of Stour Wood to the east. Stour Wood is a site of special scientific interest and lies within the area of outstanding natural beauty of the Suffolk coasts and heaths. The site itself is also within the coastal protection belt. The site does lie outside of the settlement development boundary for the purposes of the local plan. Although there is limited support in the local plan for new dwellings outside of the settlement development boundary, the National Planning Policy Framework at paragraph 80C supports the reuse of redundant or disused buildings where it will enhance its immediate setting. And it is believed that that will happen in this case. Okay. The building will retain its current form, shown here on the site plan. It will retain the footprint as shown as part of the change of use, with private amenity space to the rear of over 100 square metres. 1 parking space will also be provided on the site alongside the building. Highways have been consulted and they don't have any objections, subject to appropriate conditions. Landscaping will also form part of the scheme and that will be secured by condition. There's no significant impact to neighbouring amenities. The site next door, which we saw on site today, is vacant but has extant permission for 2 detached dwellings which are set further back on the site. The building will be refurbished with a new roof of metal profile sheeting with solar panels and black stained cladding as shown in the pictures there. This slide shows the proposed ground floor plan with a kitchen, lounge, diner, small hall area and downstairs toilet. The garage on the right hand side, although doesn't provide an appropriate car parking space, does provide storage for cycles or other household paraphernalia. Okay. The first floor plan here is of the 1 bedroom and bathroom, and the space that the 1 bedroom dwelling creates meets the housing space standards set by the government. Okay. This shows front on from the site the forge building, and you can see the wood behind. A bat survey and an ecological appraisal have been completed and revealed the site itself does not support any woodland habitat. And you can see that there's no vegetation on the site at all. It is in the wood behind. But bats could use the site for commuting and foraging. The bat survey confirmed that there's no evidence of roosting bats within the site, and ecological mitigation and enhancement measures are recommended and could be secured by condition. Natural England and Ecology at Place Services raise no objections. Okay. These are some photos of the site. The parking would be to the right of the site, where you can see here. And that's the vacant site to the left and north of the site there. And the rear of the building itself. And the view up Primrose Hill, where you can see the building is slightly set back. There's no objections to the application. Rabness Parish Council made us aware of surface water at the bottom of the hill gathers on rainfall, but to comply with building regulations, any surface water on the site would be through an infiltration system, which is usual for a dwelling. And whilst the location of the development is not supported by local plan policy, the National Planning Policy Framework does support the reuse of a redundant building and where it will enhance its immediate setting. And the refurbishment of the building in this case, it will clean it up, landscaping of the site will prevent the continued disuse and tired forge building from deteriorating further. Okay, thank you.
Right, thank you very much. So we go to public speakers. There is nobody from the agent. There's nobody in favour of the application, but I see Mr. Marshall wished to comment on this one. So if you'd like to come forward, Mr. Marshall, and use the microphone there, I think.
Very much. As the planning committee members are aware, members of the public can only make supporting and objecting comments at committee meetings. Mr. Ford selected me as an objector to this application. The Director of Planning, Mr. Guyver, has stated that tendering planning is fair, consistent and reasonable. Councillor Harris has repeatedly emphasised the harm and benefits of applications. This application has been recommended by officers for approval, but it is a departure from the adopted development plan, whereas other similar applications are recommended for refusal and never have the chance to come before the planning committee members. This situation is unfair and inconsistent for those applications. This application was validated on Monday, the 22nd of November 2021, and this far exceeds the 52-week government planning guarantee period. Although this application is a departure from the adopted development plan, it has many benefits and should be approved by the planning committee. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Marshall. There is nobody from the parish, although we saw a representative this morning from Rabness. The ward member is not here. So just ask Alison if she's got anything further to add. Nothing. Right. In that case, questions, Councillor. Councillor Alexander.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of 3 questions. The first thing is the Speaker said it was a departure from the local plan. Is that correct? Or what impact will it have on the surrounding area?
The application site is outside of the settlement development boundary, where the local plan likes to direct any development of housing. But we can look at the National Planning Policy Framework for guidance, and there is that in there which says that we can support the reuse of redundant and disused buildings where it will enhance the setting. And we do believe in this case and consider that that will happen by bringing this, refurbishing the building.
Yes, I too looked at the NPPF this afternoon. In half an hour we had left. And I agree with exactly what you're saying on this. One thing I did pick up though is that the emphasis now is on rather leaving something to deteriorate and fall to pieces, that you actually do something about it and enhance it and make it look apart, traditionally part, because it's a beautiful building. Have I read that correctly?
Sorry, I misheard the last bit that you said.
Did I interpret the NPPF correctly?
Yes, you did, sorry.
Right. The Also, we heard a statement about flooding on the road. I asked at the site visit about the floodplain. Does it fall heavily within that?
No, it doesn't fall within flood zone 2 or 3, and so there was no requirement to submit a flood risk assessment with the application.
I believe, correct, if I'm right, that there are other buildings in the process of being built next door.
Yes, the vacant site next door has extant permission for 2 detached dwellings with a detached single garage each, yes.
And will the buildings that have be next door be coupled up with this and then be attached to the main sewage system?
As I understand, they will be attached to the main sewage, yes.
Councillor Harris, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Some of the questions I was going to ask have already been asked by Councillor Alexander. But I wanted to just clarify a point on the members' call-in process, and sort of picking up on a point from Mr. Marshall there, where he was talking about fairness. And I think that, you know, he's absolutely right in terms of fairness. All planning applications need to be fair, absolutely, and I'd like to think that they are. In terms of all planning applications, if the ward councillor in a particular ward, in this instance, this ward, was so in favour of an application, could he still call it in if the officers decided to turn it down? So in the event of it being turned down, the planning committee member or the ward member could call it into committee. Can we clarify that, please? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Harris. So yes, members can call in an application, whether it is recommended for approval or recommended by refusal. What we do when we inquire as to members asking for a call-in, we do clarify whether, if it was to be refused, whether they would be happy for it to be refused on the delegated powers, or if it was recommended for refusal, would they still want it to come in front of the committee? So that opportunity is there for members, yes.
Great, as I thought, so thank you very much. But I just wanted to sort of clarify that, you know, that the process is fair, and it can be, you know, any application can be brought before the committee. Thank you. No further questions.
Councillor Placey, please.
Thank you. Should this be approved, is there any way that we can be assured that it won't then come back to us with a change and want to be demolished and a new building put in its place, as we have so many recently?
We can't be sure that that won't happen, and each new application will be assessed on its merits. So at this stage, we are looking at what is before us.
So we can't put any condition or anything in. Okay, thank you.
Now, I don't have any further questions. Yes, Councillor Alexander.
I'd like to go to page 26, tree and landscape officers, if I may. I have looked through the agenda, and although I didn't ask any further questioning on this on the site visit, it said that the site layout shows that a turning/parking bay will be set close to the tree, but this tree is of value, and I'm not sure whether it's covered by TPO, and therefore, in order to minimise the impact of the construction of or turning parking bay on the tree, it should be constructed using a no-dig construction technique. Is this in our conditions for that?
Thank you. Yes, will impose a condition on approval to have details of the no-dig construction method that would be used. The oak tree is not protected by a tree preservation order, but all the same, the Stour Wood is protected as a designated site, and obviously that tree has amenity value in itself, so that we would like to protect that through a no-dig construction of the parking spaces that are going to be placed nearby.
Just to help me out, which part under the conditions and reasons is that? What number, please? Does it fall under number point 17?
It does. It's condition 17. Yes, thank you.
The condition as read, and this will be the condition that will be carried forward.
Yes, it will.
Thank you.
Councillor Fowler, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Chairman, when we visited the site this morning, there was, I believe, a representative from the parish council, from Rabness Parish Council, who I believe asked to point out the flooding that occurs in that area, which I mean I'm aware of because I don't live that far away in the neighbouring village. And that area is an area that the surface water does gather there, but it doesn't gather there for long. And I don't believe that something like that is a huge problem. And overall, it's quite a good application, I believe. So therefore, I'd like to propose approval as per officer's recommendation. Thank you, Chairman.
Chair, I'd like to second that.
Right, before I take the vote, any further points that anybody would like to bring up?
Thank you. Just to say really that, you know, I believe that the officers have made the correct decision in this. I think that, you know, harm v benefit, etc. This is outside of the local plan's boundary, but in this instance, there is considerable benefit in the regeneration of that building, and therefore, you know, I see no downside to this. You know, we have absolutely no objectors from local residents, and we have no objection from the local parish council. So, you know, I will be voting for this application.
Those in favour, please show. That is unanimous. That is now approved. Move on to land north of Bromley Road, Ardley, which is planning application 22000467. This is a detail application. The entry, as I understand it, had been approved on a previous occasion. So, Mr. Guyver, I think, will be doing this one.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm just getting the screen ready. Bear with me. Thank you. Okay. Ready, Chairman. Thank you very much. Good evening, councillors, members of the public. So this is a reserved matters application for 4 dwellings. As a detailed reserved matters application, the only considerations before the committee tonight are scale, layout, landscape and appearance. The principal are developing 4 dwellings on this site, and the means of access have already been established through the grant of outline permission. So here we are, site location plan. The site lies to the north of Bromley Road, which is in the Crockleford area of Ardleigh Parish, and it adjoins the administrative boundary of Colchester. Now, the land immediately adjacent the application, you'll see on the aerial photograph there, is itself under construction for 4 dwellings, for which the original outline consent was allowed on appeal, and from which access to this development is proposed to be taken. Now, immediately south of the site, which you would have seen when you were out there this morning, is another development under construction by Bellway Homes for 145 dwellings, which was also allowed on appeal, despite the objections of both this council and Colchester. Salary Brook, which extends along the eastern edge of Colchester, borders the rear of the site and to the north and west. We've got some photographs here, view across to the site, which you would have witnessed this morning. I don't have the precise dates of when these photos were taken, so it may look slightly different, but these are my officer's photos. The adjacent houses that are under construction on the site next door to this one. The houses under construction across the way. And views down towards Salary Brook, which runs along the back of the site. Now, the broad location for the Tendring Colchester Borders Garden Community is not far away. It lies to the east beyond the adjoining development. You'll see the adjoining development is in the grey area, and the proposed layout for the development we're discussing is on the left side of the screen there. So the area for the garden community is beyond this to the east, but that's going to be the subject of a longer term community development and separate planning framework and decisions by the joint committee. The outline planning permission for the site we're discussing tonight was granted in February 2022 and is the subject of the standard financial contribution through Section 106 unilateral undertakings for the RAMS programme of ecological mitigation, and there are a number of planning conditions relating to highways access, the need for a construction management plan. So the proposal is for 4 two-storey detached 4-bedroom dwellings, each with attached carports with terraces above. Access is via the adjoining development, and the properties are arranged in a cul-de-sac formation. The internal road layout, which incorporates a passing place and turning area, has been accepted by the local highway authority, and the proposal meets with the adopted parking standards. To give maximum space to the boundary with Bromley Road to the south and to Salary Brook, the dwellings have been orientated so that the rear gardens back onto those features, with the dwellings facing inwards onto the internal access road. The distance between these proposed dwellings and those in the adjoining site are considered to be sufficient not to give rise to any issues around privacy or overlooking. The Bromley Road boundary to the south there is demarcated by some hedgerow, which provides a level of screening. The council's tree and landscape officer, you'll see from the report, recommends that as much as possible is retained or otherwise replaced with something similar. There's groups of alder, willow and conifers within the main body of the site, and the boundary to Salary Brook comprises some trees as well, which I'll talk about in a second. So all the trees you saw on the site this morning are to be retained. So what you saw on the site, trees-wise, are to be retained. Now, the landscaping planting scheme, there has been one submitted with this application, the Reserve Matters application, and that proposes 12 additional trees and in excess of 190 new shrubs and 380 odd hedge plants. But if minded to approve, we would seek an updated version of that landscaping scheme through a planning condition and would require compliance with that scheme, ensuring that it meets with the very latest version of this plan. So the potential for surface water flooding and proximity to Salary Brook are consideration for the scheme from a flood risk perspective. However, the application is supported by a flood risk assessment and calculations for surface water runoff, on which both the Environment Agency and Essex County Council, as the lead local flood authority, have been consulted and have confirmed no objection. Soakaway and drainage features are incorporated into various parts of the site to manage the surface water runoff and water running off of roofs as well. The development won't be served by the mains foul sewage system. It's going to be served by a Cladesta biodisc treatment plant, which is to be buried into the ground, and it's very similar to the one that has been installed to serve the 4 dwellings on the adjoining site. And the way that that works is that the sewage that goes into it is treated within the unit, and using microorganisms and oxygen, it breaks down the solids, and the effluent from that is odourless and safe for disposal into local watercourse. This application is also supported by an ecological assessment, which has been considered by the ecologist at Essex, who has raised no objection subject to the proposed mitigation measures within that strategy being secured. It's therefore proposed that the mitigation measures identified in that assessment are secured through the planning conditions. Now, these include bat boxes, sparrow terraces, swift bricks, and native species of hedgerow planting. It's also proposed that a sensitive lighting scheme is secured through condition to further ensure the impact on biodiversity is minimised, particularly as it has been identified a likelihood of bats foraging and commuting around the perimeter of the site. Moving on to the design elevations here, each dwelling adopts the same design and in turn reflects very closely the approach on the adjoining development, using contemporary architecture features and materials such as the grey brick, the vertical cladding, aluminium windows and doors, and metal roof. Each dwelling exceeds the internal technical housing space standards, and by virtue of the layout, all habitable rooms receive an adequate level of natural light. The gardens serving the dwellings also exceed the requirements for private amenity space. Now, I note that we have 2 objections from members of the public, one concerned about the number of additional homes utilising the access onto Bromley Road, and the other is outlined on your update sheet, only received a couple of days ago, so do please take that into account in your deliberations. And that raises a series of concerns about the development, including conflicts with the local plan, ecological damage to the site, lack of affordable housing, and comparisons to other unrelated planning applications and appeals. Ardleigh Parish Council has also made representations highlighting mainly its objection to the original outline application and its subsequent complaint about the decision taken at the outline stage. The Parish Council has also, however, indicated a preference for the dwellings to be smaller rather than replicating those on the adjoining development, and to maximise the green space too and the wildlife value of Salary Brook. I just go back, give you the layout plan there. Officers are satisfied that the proposal is appropriate, and the recommendation is to approve the reserve matters application. Now, if the committee is minded to support that recommendation, further conditions are recommended, covering a series of more detailed matters. So the standard development to be in accordance with the approved plans, requirement for a construction environmental management plan, the ecological mitigation measures identified in the assessment are to be secured and implemented, the sensitive lighting scheme that I mentioned earlier, the internal layout and parking arrangements must be in compliance with the approved plans, and we will require a detailed plan of hard and soft landscaping to be submitted for approval and complied with thereafter. And the standard requirements for the timing of planting related to the landscaping scheme and any necessary replacement planting. Chairman, I'm happy to respond to any questions that yourself or the committee may have, but the recommendation is approval with those conditions. Thank you.
Right, thank you very much. And again, on this application, the only request for public speaking is from Mr. Marshall again.
Thank you. Just clearing up Councillor Harris's point. There seems to be two tracks to get a application to the committee. One is via a member, and the other one is, as Ms. Hastings would agree with, if the application is against the development plan, goes against it, then there's two options. One is approval, one is refusal. If it's refusal, it doesn't go to committee. If it is for approval, then it has to go to committee. That's what I've been told by Mr. Pateman G. There you go. Right, going on to this one. The Director of Planning, Mr. Guyver, has stated that tendering planning is fair, consistent and reasonable. And Councillor Harris has emphasised harm and benefits for applications. This application follows the outline planning application 2101-481, where both applications do not comply with the development plan adopted on the 25th of January 2022. 2101-481, the outline, was approved on February the 4th, 2022. So it shouldn't have been approved because it was against the local plan. Both this application and the outline should have been classed as major applications as described in the recent public comments attached to the presentation here. Recent adjacent applications have been refused by officers, and 21-01785 is being considered for appeal. It's been submitted for appeal, and its statement of case presumes this application is approved and under construction. Much harm has been made to the environment and ecological of the site, and members would agree with this on their site visit. More harm will be made to the ecological and environmental when the site is built out, because it is next to Salary Brook. Also contributing to the harm will be the removal of the 33 kilovolt overhead lines and poles and the installation of underground cables. The road access is very dangerous, and the only benefit for tendering taxpayers from this development would be the new homes bonus of £15,438 and any off-site affordable home contributions which should be raised from a major planning application. You will notice also that the pond that has been here since the 1923 Ordnance Survey map has been destroyed, missing, and all the environment around it has gone, and they can be seen on the maps. Thank you very much.
Right, thank you very much, Mr. Marshall. I have nobody from the parish or town council, no ward member. So we'll go straight to Councillor Alexander, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to just get some quick detail about the road and the width of the road, and as a part of my further detail, as I don't know whether the road at this stage comes within what we're doing this evening and looking at. What actually will be the width of the road at its narrowest point? The ski slope road that's going in.
Thank you very much. So just to clarify, are you, Councillor Alexander, you're talking about the width of the road that is internal to the development and how it is designed to extend into the adjoining site. Thank you. I will just check my papers for a measurement on that. And it will be the subject of a highway authority condition requiring a certain width as well. So that's the piece of information that I'm going to rely on in advising you. Thank you. And my colleagues who are assisting me in finding that information, as soon as we get that, I'll respond to that particular point. Thank you. I'm happy if the chairman's happy to continue.
Yeah.
Thank you. Right. At one point, you spoke about water coming from the roof, its behaviour pattern, and where it would fall from, but you didn't actually say at the end of your statement where this water collated will end up eventually. Could you expand on that?
Thank you. Yes, so the sustainable drainage system for this site comprises a number of facilities, including soakaways into the ground that emanate from the pipework around the roof of each dwelling. So that infiltrates the water into the ground, which is a building control requirement as well to check that. But there are also sort of crate dispersal systems within the scheme as well. And the way that that works is that when water seeps into the ground, rather than just sitting on top of the ground, it actually goes into a crate system and is distributed out in different angles. So what you don't end up with is a massive blockage of water in the event of heavy rainfall, either onto the roof or into the ground. But essentially, where does the water end up? It ends in the ground, but its flow into watercourses is slowed down by that process, so that you don't have a flood.
So on Sunday morning or whatever day it is when people pop out to wash their car and all of the residual soap polysaturates will also be caught up within that system.
Yes, I mean, when you wash a car in soap, very often that soap will end up in the water dispersal system of that development, but through filtration through the ground, a lot of the chemicals get filtered out. But we don't have a separate drainage system for car washing that we do for the general rainwater and surface water flooding. So I think it's a fair point, Councillor Alexander. Thank you.
It is a fair point. What's fair about it is that, is there a guarantee that this water will stay out of the reach of the brook, or could at some time this excess of water by over rain, etc., could reach natural drainage and get into the brook at some time?
Thank you, Councillor Alexander. Well, the way it's been designed is to minimise the risk of water flowing straight into the brook, because it is trying to intercept that water at the various points, both through the crate system and through the soakaway system, to the extent that the local lead flood authority is satisfied that it is the correct solution for the site. Now, in an absolute extreme monsoon style rain event, there's always going to be that risk that the water will flow across that. But in terms of the general levels of rainfall that we might expect, and some of the higher level rainfall events that we might expect to see, the system has been designed to the satisfaction of our colleagues and advisors in the local flood authority.
Just a question, Chair, if I may, a couple of questions on the biomass. We saw it in place, and over the years and months, we've got quite used to seeing these things, getting quite an angle on what their function in our society are. And they're all good things. I like them very much indeed. Will there be two? One for each of the four, because that looked like a standard site in my mind.
Thank you. That's a good question, Councillor Alexander. The answer is there will be two. One serving the development that is under construction, a separate one serving the development that you're considering as part of this application. And they are designed to accommodate the effluent arising from 30 people. But on this particular site, you will have two of those packaging facilities. Well, sorry, let me clarify. One on the existing development and one on the development under consideration tonight.
Just one last question, if I may. The introduction into the mass will also incorporate hand washing, toothbrushing, washing up, and also washing of clothes. Is that correct?
I think that's a level of detail. I don't have a specific answer. I mean, the building regulations require that certain foul waste has to be kept separate from rainwater and surface water. My understanding would be that dirty waters, particularly foul sewage, hand washing, would go into the package plant, be processed by that package plant, and the effluent that comes out of it would have been treated and be clean, and that's what comes out of the site thereafter.
Just to clear this in my mind and to help maybe the committee, this is what you think, this isn't exactly what you know, is that correct?
I think that was a fair point to make. No, it's a general understanding. I do not know specifically whether that is the case for this facility, but there are building regulations that actually control how effluent and discharge is managed from development. So it may be for the other process. So no, I rein back, and that was not a definitive answer, Councillor Alexander. That was just an indication of my understanding.
Thank you, Chair.
And I have some advice on road with us as well. So by virtue of my colleagues have advised me that the requirement is a 4 metre wide private road. So that's the carriageway, which is on there. And you would have remembered from the presentation, they've provided for a turning head and a passing place as well, which would be required for that kind of width. And in terms of the access, 5.5 metre and a size 5 turning head, 8 metre by 8 metre. Oh, 5.5, sorry, thank you, 5.5. Which was, I think, mentioned in the public gallery through the existing site and access into the site here. So 5.5 on the existing site that's being developed and access into the site that we're talking about tonight.
Right, thank you. Very thorough questioning. Now it's Councillor Baker next, and then Councillor Harris.
Thank you, Chairman. I've got a number of questions, that is. We've been on, sorry, I have to find it, paragraph 2.5. Ardley Parish Council have been going through and have worked very hard to bring in their own neighbourhood plan. And I'm a bit concerned. It's in its very early stages. As I understand it, it's actually out to consultation before they submit it. So I would say that it's in its latter stages, and I'd like to clarify that if I may. And how much weight should we give it if it is in those stages rather than as it's stated in the report? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Baker. So the Ardley Parish Council have done a lot of work on their neighbourhood plan, and they have only just within the last few days submitted it to my team because the next stage is a formal consultation, which is actually hosted by the District Council and that will require Cabinet approval to go ahead with. In terms of the weight that we can attach to it at the moment, it's quite limited because it hasn't gone through the full process of being examined and adopted thereafter by the council. But what I would say in the context of this application, of course, is that the outline permission has already been granted, and what is under consideration here in the reserve matters application, as I mentioned at the head of the presentation, is really the detail of the proposal, scale, layout, landscape and appearance.
Thank you, Chairman. If I may, on this particular slide, can you indicate to me how far from the rear of the houses to my left, our left, are from Salary Brook? Because from what we saw today, it was not easy to visualise where the back of the properties would be in relation to the brook.
Thank you. I don't know how well you can see it, but there's a sort of blue coloured section here which indicates the route of the brook. The red line of the site effectively goes all the way to the edge of the brook, and the distance between the properties and the brook itself is the green area, essentially between the edge of these blue blocks and the red line and the brook beyond it. So the gap you see, I don't know whether you can see I'm not doing it very well because the cursor juts about, but those are the gaps between the properties and the brook.
Thank you for that, Mr. Guy, but it doesn't actually answer the question asked, which is how far actually is it? Because it didn't on our site visit. It was quite difficult to. I can appreciate because we've got a lovely little coloured bit of paper here with it on, but it doesn't actually give us any indication as to how far it is, because it seemed this plan seems a lot bigger than the gap that it could be. So I'd be grateful if you could advise us. Thank you.
And thank you for the clarification. Yeah, sorry, I was naively just pointing on the map. We understand it's in the region of 13 metres is the gap between the rear of the properties and the edge of the site.
Chairman, if I may, one last question for now, because I do have a few others, but obviously there are other people. With regards to the digestory thing that deals with all the effluent, I can't see it in the report, so forgive me if it is in there. Who is responsible for making sure that is maintained so that we don't get direct raw sewage going into, I'm presuming, into Salary Brook, because that obviously leads into, Salary Brook, the other area and bits and pieces. So, yeah.
Thank you. I mean, this is a question that I won't have a definitive answer for you because I simply don't know what the answer is. But from just my experience of seeing these things before, normally there's some kind of management arrangement amongst the residents which ensure that as and when required, the facility is emptied as needs to. These are matters perhaps beyond what we can control in terms of the planning system, and I don't know for sure if that's the arrangement that's going to be put in place here, but it's just an understanding of schemes that I've seen in the past. So I apologise that I cannot give you a categoric answer.
Chair, if I just clarify on that then, please. Would it have been something that would have been dealt with no, your outline was just for access, was it not? Just confirm that. Outline and principle. So this, anything to do with a condition regarding maintenance of anything on that site will be dealt with now. Is that correct?
Depends on what element of a scheme we're talking about. If it's a private package facility for effluent, that can be done via a private arrangement completely outside of the planning system. A lot of it is controlled under building regulations. to ensure that they work correctly and effluent is taken away from the site in the way that it should be done. But the actual stewardship or means of managing these things is not a matter that is covered by the planning.
Thank you, Chairman. No further questions at this time.
Councillor Harris.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, many of the questions that I was going to ask are actually taken care of in the excellent presentation by Mr. Guyver. So thank you for that. But this site has already been approved in terms of outline. So we're looking at design, scale, appearance. So with that in mind, and you mentioned building control earlier, the actual design of the building, will that largely be taken care of by building control? And my thought process behind that, and I'm not a builder, but some of the design features of the buildings that were already there sort of had my head scratching in terms of the water that was coming from the roofs, and I know that Councillor Alexander spoke about that earlier. With what appeared to be sort of drain pipes coming out of a wall. There's no guttering, with the water sort of running down the side of the building, and what we actually saw, which appeared to be a drain pipe immediately above an electrical socket or electrical light fitting, which I thought, that doesn't seem quite right. So does the planning committee get involved in that detail, or can we take it for granted that the building control will look at those? Because, I saw things there that were of concern. We also saw cladding, which was bowed coming away, potentially, I might be wrong, but, potential sort of damp on the wall, and just had me asking questions. And so the question is, building control, what's their involvement in this, please?
Thank you. So just to provide the context, really, in terms of the planning decision that we look to make, the main issues around there are as you say, the scale, layout, landscape and appearance, the external look of it. In terms of how it works internally, both in terms of structural safety, electrics, insulation, these kind of things, these are all governed by the building regulations. Now, the building regulations are monitored and enforced by not only the council, but can be done so also by external private agencies that have the powers to undertake that function as well. When a property is occupied, the expectation is that it would have complied with all of the relevant building regulations to be issued with a completion certificate. The way the building control works is that the property will be inspected at key stages of the build, whether that be from the footings going in, the foundation, concrete being poured in, different bits of the steel work going in. It is inspected at key stages of the process, but it won't receive a completion certificate unless all of the checks have been done either by a tendering district council or by a private building control agency.
Okay, thank you. I'm glad it's not us that's going to be looking into that then. So the appearance of the site, when I first drove onto the site, or we drove onto the site, I actually thought, well, actually the appearance looks quite stunning. And they reminded me of lots of ski lodges, and it was quite impressive. And I mentioned ski lodges because we appear to have a ski slope that goes right through the middle of it, which the coach sort of barely navigated through and could get up and down it. I know that the proper road surface is not on it yet, but nevertheless, it is a very, very, very steep road. One can only imagine what that's going to be like in the snow and ice, which may come at some point. But how would dust carts navigate that? How would rubbish for the site be collected and recycling and things like that, please?
Thank you. I don't know if my colleagues can check whether there's any sort of specific arrangements that have been put in place in that, but for developments where it's not possible to access properties individually with a dust cart, usually arrangements are put in place that there is a communal area to which the bins can be taken so that the dust cart is able to collect them from that location. Now, I didn't read any sort of specific detail about that in the report and the documentation, I must confess, but that is the general way things are worked. If you can't get access directly to each individual property, then there'll be a designated area to which the refuse would be taken. And my colleagues are kindly just going to look through the documentation to see if any specific provision has been made so far with this scheme.
Which I was going to add, it is, if that's not in there, can that be added to the condition that officers will, obviously, we'll leave it to you if we're mindful to approve it, to come up with a suitable solution to that issue. You mentioned about trees on the site as well, and you said all the trees that we saw are all staying. My view, or when I was there, and it comes back to the distance that Councillor Baker was talking about, was that some of the smaller ones would likely to be taken away. But you're saying to me that they're all going to remain. Is that right?
Thank you. Now, I'm advised that essentially the notable trees there are to retain. Now, looking through the documentation on both the previous outline application and the detailed application, there were previously more trees and shrubs on the site that have been subsequently cleared. There was a tree survey done which graded all of the trees and shrubs from the highest value down to the lowest value, and the lowest value ones include those that aren't likely to survive if they were left there. But the ones that remain, which will be in those healthy categories, you would have seen on the site. So my understanding, I'm led to believe from the information I've looked at, is that what you see is to be retained, but that through the landscaping scheme that we will look to secure through condition, there will be a substantial increase in trees and shrubs on the site alongside those to be retained.
And just one point of clarification, I think you've already said it, with regards to the amenity space, because it is quite a tight site there, that all the amenity space meets the minimum requirements.
Yes, Councillor Harris, it meets our requirements for private amenity space comfortably, and I've had some thought about the condition requiring perhaps details of arrangements for refuse collection, and I think if the committee think that that's a good idea, that is something that we could add on to the conditions in any approval.
Okay, thank you, Chairman. Thank you. No further questions. Thank you.
Alexander next.
Thank you, Chair. I'm looking at the conditions and point 5 on page 60. It reads that all external lighting shall be in accordance with specification, location set out in the scheme and maintained thereafter in accordance with the scheme. Under no circumstances should any external lighting be installed without the prior consent of the local planning authority. And this is to cover the habitat and species regulation. I believe that's correct. How far does that go in? I mean, if somebody, for example, purchased one of those properties and thought, oh, I'll pop a little light outside, help me see at night, surely that doesn't cover that, or does it?
It may be something that a bit of clarification within the wording of the condition might be helpful for. It would be the internal lighting around the highways within the scheme. The intention wouldn't be to restrict people in being able to put an up-down light outside their door on the side of their property. It's very much to do with the managed lighting scheme, which comes with the public realm and the roadways associated with the development.
Yeah, it says here, all matters reserved except access for 4 number. Well, have we got any movement on, can we actually say we don't agree? Because after going down there in the coach today, sliding down there and trying to get out again, the access to those 4 vehicles is not safe at all. So do we have any say on that?
Thank you. No, the access arrangements were agreed as part of the outline consent with the endorsement of the Highway Authority. What I would say about that is that there are sites, perhaps not so many across our district, where the topography is challenging, but there are sites in and around the area where there is a steep incline that has to be navigated in the event of difficult weather conditions, but there is nothing within the advice from our Highway Authority colleagues to suggest that there's anything wrong with what is being proposed. But I think the point is well made. We perhaps have the luxury in tendering that the majority of our district is relatively flat.
Councillor Alexander, wanted to get back in?
Are we at debate, Chair?
Councillor Baker then.
Thank you, Chairman. I think my final question, and I will make comments during the debate, paragraph 6.40, which is all about the biodiversity, and we heard from Mr. Marshall about that there is going to be harm under ecology and environment. It's a question that has been nagging at me for a while in other applications, that we always get the word in "and would secure net gains for biodiversity." Do we actually have a mechanism where we as the local planning authority go back and actually say, yes, there has been a net gain? We have all these conditions, but do we actually make sure that applications that we approve, obviously, do have a gain for the environment? Thank you.
Thank you. No, we don't proactively go back and monitor whether there has been a net gain. That would involve a further survey once the site's been completed. What we do though is rely on the advice from the ecologists who both put forward the proposals and the advice we received from our ecologists in Essex County Council to indicate whether the measures proposed are likely, in their professional view, to facilitate a net gain in biodiversity. What we don't do, as a matter of course, is proactively go back and resurvey those sites to see whether an actual net gain in biodiversity has been achieved.
Thank you, Chairman, if I just may. Obviously, we condition the fact that there should be a biodiversity enhancement strategy, yet we don't make sure that it's done and there's no gain. So maybe that's a conversation that we should be having, to maybe we should be going back to some of these sites or asking the developers. I'm not necessarily saying this site, but big sites, and say, did it work? And if it didn't, why not? Thank you.
If we are in debate, it's quite a difficult one, this, because for what we saw this morning, and when you see anything that's sort of like in the process of being finished or done, you never get a true reflection of what it's going to look like, not until the actual opening day. Then you realise it's almost, as you said, the topography of it is challenging. Yeah, so is that road. I looked at it from various angles, Chair, and the one that I looked at was for reasonable adjustment to the people who may want to live there. I think that if you have disability problems, it could be exceptionally challenging, but at the same token, I think it's rather mad, and I rather like it. So with that in mind, as long as I have your assurance that everything that's been spoken tonight will be carried out and be looked at and ensured, then I'm at this position. I think I'd like to propose that the recommendation is laid out.
Thank you very much, Councillor Harris. No, you can reply to that. Yes.
Sorry, Chairman, to butt in there. I just wanted to clarify with Councillor Alexander's proposal that you would like to see the additional condition requiring details of refuse collection. No, so that's as per written in the published agenda. Okay, thank you.
You have convinced me that through this debate that this has been well looked at and it's being well serviced by us as a council, because we can only do so much. And I understand that. And so long as we carry out what's in the conditions and it's all done, then I'm happy to say, again, Chair, I propose it.
Thank you, Chairman. I think I already mentioned the site for me, I think, is a stunning looking site. I really do think that the properties are, quite exceptionally well designed in terms of the overall appearance of it. I think that there are some concerns and questions I would have as to the individual intricate design of some of those things, but I'm reassured that the building control will look at that, and that's front of mind. But in terms of the overall vision of it and the appearance, I think it's quite stunning. I think that the scale of the site is acceptable. I don't see that being detrimental to the area. I think that the landscaping that remains and the landscaping that they're going to add to it as well, I think is going to make the site a very, very nice site. And whilst that kind of development may not be for everybody, there are people that would absolutely love that, and it fits in with their lifestyle. The road would concern me in terms of the height and the incline of it. It hasn't had the full surface yet, so it's not finished. So with the condition of the road when we drove down here in the coach is quite it's quite slippery. But I think once the tarmac's on it should be fine. But you might need if I lived there, I'd probably buy a 4x4, that's for sure. So I'm very happy to second it on the condition that the proposer adds the condition about the refuse, so that we have a solution to that, and we'll leave it to officers to come up with a solution.
I accept that, Councillor Harris. What has the officer got to offer on that?
I understand that the proposer, the president and the seconder are saying the conditions of approval would be those on pages 58 to 61, plus something about the refuse collection. We are in a... Yes, go ahead.
Chairman, sorry, this is an awkward moment to bring this in. Before the vote is taken on any of that, I just wanted to clarify a point that I made earlier, which may have been a bit misleading around the distances from the rear of the properties to the brook. I said 13 metres, but there are some instances where it varies and can be as low as 8.5 metres. Generally speaking, we've got distances of 13 metres, probably best to get that up there. Better raise it now before you go ahead and make a decision on it. But very narrow points here, you will see we're down to 5.5. But generally speaking, it's between 8.5 and 13 metres. And I apologise if I misled you when I gave my answer earlier. But on that point, I will now be quiet and allow members to continue the debate.
Thank you, Mr. Guyver, for clarifying that. So it's from 8.5 to 13-ish or about. having seen the actual properties, and Councillor Harris alluded to it earlier, the properties that are virtually, well, almost complete, although it seemed funny to me that the buildings were still under construction, yet all the landscaping was in. I thought that would have come at the very last minute. I wasn't too impressed with them. I wasn't too impressed with them at all. As Councillor Harris alluded to, there was cladding that was buckling. On one of the properties, as we went down the slope on the left, it seemed that there was damp rising up the wall. The guttering, a very strange decision. And I know Mr. Guyver mentioned that all the rainwater would soak away. Well, after it's dropped from the top of the building, it might soak away and infiltrate into the ground. And Councillor Harris mentioned it, and we both looked at it and went, you've got what appears to be an outpipe or a guttering outlet directly above what appears to be a light fitting. Now, if that is the design of the stuff that's already gone up, I'm sorry, that's poor. That's poor. And I'm surprised that building regs haven't picked that up and gone, no, you're not doing that. So on a design basis, if that's what they're going to do and make it exactly the same as the ones that are already there, it's not good enough. So I'm in two minds as to whether I support the application as is. And also my comment about the sewage or the effluent, we're going to call it, and it being filtered, and us not being able to condition sort of a maintenance plan, which we have done on large developments with regard to SUDs. It's a condition that we, or the developer or the management company, will have a management plan. And I don't see that this is any different regardless of the size. So I would like to see, if it does go through, I would like to see that conditioned, that there is some sort of maintenance plan or put forward by the developers before we're happy to say yes. Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Baker's covered some of what I was going to say, but I'm a bit confused with the conditions that are in this application. So I think you mentioned, Gary, earlier that there were going to be additional conditions if it got approved. Does that recommendation approval cover those additional conditions, or do we actually need to spell them out?
Yeah, but if you're happy for me to respond. No, I beg your pardon. There were conditions attached to the grant of outline consent. There are also conditions proposed for the reserve matters, if we were minded to approve the reserve matters, and those are spelt out within the report. The only additional condition that we've been discussing are the ones tonight around refuse collection and Councillor Baker's suggestion earlier. But when I mentioned further conditions, it's conditions on the approval of reserve matters as well as the conditions on the outline.
Thank you, Chairman. I just want to come back on the point that Councillor Baker has made, and obviously we share I think the same concerns as to what we witnessed on the other sites with the cladding and the unusual design where the pipe seems to be above an electrical component, etc. Can we just clarify from the officer once again that detail, that's not what the planning committee are here to look at? It's the principle of the design in terms of the features of the overall look at, and if there are concerns, building control will deal with that, and it would have to be certificated off, I think you said earlier, on completion. So I think it's an important point that we get clarity on for the committee, please.
Correct.
Right, no further things that coming up. So therefore, we have a proposer and a seconder on page 47, items 1 and 2, plus this condition on the refuse collection that we saw this morning. So I'm going to ask you again to show by hand. So Those in favour, please show. Sorry, yeah, 1, 2, 3. I hadn't. It was, yes, it's a question of the SUDs and whether we needed to tighten up on that a bit. Yes.
If we just wanted to re-explore that, I think the proposal from Councillor Baker was the addition of a condition requiring clarification of what the management arrangements would be for the foul sewage discharge into the package facility. I mean, that could be a condition. I think it would be fairly straightforward for the applicant to put in a statement just explaining how it works for the council to discharge that. I don't think it would necessarily need to go any further than that and hold it to a particular route. I think it may be a case that we seek a piece of information that explains how it works to give the authority comfort that those arrangements are in place, but that's probably as far as I would recommend taking it.
What, that we're not going to take any more additional things on SUDs?
Yes. Yeah. Whether or not they're going to take you to their proposed calculations as elaborated by Gary.
Well, I'm halfway through a vote now. It's a bit late to change it, I think.
Well, I think all this is quite simple. I think that, you know, what Mr. Guyver has said is that, you know, basically leave it to the officers really to get a statement from them to say that it's going to be managed. And I think that would be a sensible thing. And that would, if that gives reassurance to the committee, then I'm happy to include that. It's quite a simple thing to do. So I would be in agreement with adding that if the proposer is as well.
Yes, Chair, but if I may just add this as a point, is that I'm looking at the application as it's laid out, putting no attachment to what's already been there. We're just looking at this matter, and that's what the proposal was based on that. But when I read about this biomass, it clearly stated within it in the spec that there is a maintenance requirement over periods of time, unlike main sewage, which naturally break down maybe over many hundreds of years or so. So I would imagine that at the point of purchase of a property, there would be some kind of maintenance contract within that agreement. And I assume that that would be statutory. So maybe I've got that wrong, but anything that needs maintenance has got to be maintained. And surely regs would pick that up and that would all be dealt with by us. So yes, I'm quite happy with everything that's been.
Amendments at this stage. So we are going to vote on that, and we'll do it with a show of hands. Again, the proposal, Councillor Alexander and Councillor Harris. Those in favour, please show. 1, 2, 6. And those against? 2. So therefore, that is now approved. Thank you very much. 6, 2. Right, let us move on. Land to the north of Glendenning, Tenpenny Hill, planning application 22/00688 full. And I think Mrs. Lang is going to produce this one for us. Good.
Thank you, Chairman. Okay, so the application we're looking at now is for the demolition of barns and extensive stables and the replacement with a 3-bed bungalow. This application follows a prior approval for the conversion of the buildings into one dwelling. This is in lieu of that deemed prior approval. And members have been familiar with the site previously and of similar applications, but I'll go through the fallback position and everything again just for clarification. Okay. So the site is located to the north of the property, known as Glendenning. The site comprises a vast array of farm buildings which were associated historically with the main farmstead of Glendenning. Access to the farm buildings is obtained through a gated access around 9 metres back from Tenpenny Hill, and the track leads round the southeast perimeter of the land now owned in connection with the original farmhouse, which will provide access to the site itself, which is about 120 metres north of the main road of Tenpenny Hill. So here's the site plan and the aerial view, just to give you an indication of that description that I've just explained in terms of the distance back from the main road of Tenpenny Hill and the route round the main farmhouse to the rear to where the existing buildings are subject of this application. So now we've got some site photos. So this is the existing building that has the prior approval already granted for its conversion. This section of the building would be the conversion, and then there is a section to the rear which is to be demolished. And as part of this proposal, the new dwelling would replace the previous section of the building for the conversion and see the demolition of the other buildings around it, just to tidy up the site a little bit more. So this is a section of the building that would be demolished and that would be secured through the approval of this application. Again, there's just another site photo there on the how you're looking at it. To the right-hand side is the demolished part, and to the left-hand side is the part with the conversion approval. You could skip on, Gary. I'll come back to that one. So that's the existing elevations that have been given the approval via the prior notification route. If you click on. So that's how it would look following the reasonable building operations necessary to convert the building, which are permitted under the prior notification route. And then this would be the proposed replacement building. And if Gary wants to go back, keep going, keep going, keep going. Excellent, that's it. So that's probably the most important slide that you'll want to consider in terms of kind of a comparison of what's allowed on the site through the conversion and what you would be allowing through the demolition of the buildings and the rebuild to provide the 3-bedroom dwelling that's proposed. So I'll move on to the fallback position and the material considerations relevant, and then you can just give me a shout if you've got any questions on that point, or if you need me to clarify any of the direct comparisons in terms of the dimensions. So essentially, what members need to consider is the difference between the fallback position and the proposed scheme, specifically in relation to any wider landscape harm or visual harm that would result. So basically, we need to be happy that the replacement building maintains that semi-rural character and doesn't go beyond the prior approval scheme in terms of footprint, height, and kind of the overall appearance and materials, just so that we can maintain that rural appearance of the area. So in terms of the differences, the footprint of the proposed dwelling would be around 11 square metres greater than the extent permission allowed under the prior notification. And as I've mentioned, this application includes a commitment to demolish all of the existing buildings on the site. Those other buildings extend to approximately 600 metres squared in addition to the existing barn, and their removal will result in a minor betterment that will be controlled by way of planning condition. In terms of highway safety, as I've explained, the access comes from Tenpenny Hill, where the existing access is, and then it kind of splits off and goes round the side and to the rear of the building. The surface treatment will be changed as a result of this development as well. The Highway Authority doesn't raise any objections, but they have requested a condition pertaining to the reception and storage of building materials. But as this is covered by the construction management plan, a separate condition is not required to control that particular requirement. In terms of landscaping and biodiversity, the location of the development does not encroach any further into the countryside than the existing expanse of built form. The commitment to demolish the widespread cluster of the buildings is also considered to amount to a minor improvement to the rural character of the area. In terms of drainage and sewerage, the application form explains that the development is not intended to connect to the main sewer, but additional information has been received to explain that the system to be installed will be similar to the one that we've looked at on the previous application, I believe. In terms of the impact on residential amenities, separation distances of in excess of 50 metres would be retained as a result of the development. So officers are happy that there's no harm in terms of residential amenity, and the proposed dwelling itself complies with space standards and would provide a good standard of amenity for the future occupants also. The application secures a unilateral undertaking for the RAMS contribution, but the open space team didn't request a contribution for this particular application. So overall, whilst the location of the development is not supported by local plan policy in the fact that it lies outside of the settlement development boundary, the fallback position has to be given significant weight in the determination of this application. As I explained previously, you need to have careful consideration to the scale, the siting and the form of development and the similarities between the proposal and the prior approval. Officers consider that the proposal would have a neutral impact on the character of the landscape in comparison to the fallback scheme, and the proposed development does not amount to any significant visual harm to residential amenities or highway safety that would warrant refusal of planning permission, and therefore the application is recommended for approval.
Right, thank you very much. And on this one, for Mr. Legree, who is the agent for this particular one.
Good evening, Chairman, members. Just a couple of points to add, I think, to the report from the planning officer. this site's been in the applicant's family for 60 years, and it did have a considerable number of sheep, pigs and cattle, but it also had 26 horses. Part of the site was used as a horse sanctuary for many years until relatively recently. And members could see the conditions of the building that are somewhat perhaps temporary in nature, but have been there for around 30 something years. The scheme is marginally bigger than the existing buildings. A nominal amount of 11 square metres, but as you've heard, there are 600 square metres of other buildings to be demolished, and clearly also the level of activity associated with 26 horses as a horse sanctuary would also be removed in perpetuity. This is an application that members may not be entirely comfortable with. That's part of the Class Q legislation that the government has brought in. But nevertheless, the issues in relation to the fallback position have been set by the second highest court in the land, the Court of Appeal. So yes, they are a material consideration, but it goes beyond that. It actually supersedes to a large degree the development plan, because it sets out the court's view as well as the government's view as set out in the legislation. What we've aimed to do, as with other applications that you've seen recently, is to ensure that the scale and character of the building is appropriate in scale to the countryside and reflects what's on the site. There is a more recent High Court case which actually allows you to go beyond that, the Formby versus Sefton Borough Council case. We haven't attempted to go that route. We believe that as long as the dwelling reflects what's already on site and what we've obtained approval for, then that's a reasonable issue. In this instance, as I say, we're removing a significant amount of buildings that we feel will be an improvement to the countryside, as well as making a reasonable, modest two-bed bungalow at the same time. Thank you.
Right, thank you very much. And now, Mr. Marshall again, speaking against the application.
I believe this is outside the settlement development boundary, goes against the development plan, but it, I believe, conforms to National Planning Policy Framework 80C, so there's no objection. I think you should approve it. Thank you.
No further speakers. Yes, I just ask Mrs. Lang if there's any additional points that she wants to raise.
Yeah, I just need to clarify, on the slide that I told you was the most important slide for you to look at, there's actually an error. So apologies for that. The report is correct, but the footprint dimension given on that particular slide is incorrect. So please note that the floor area is actually in the region of 93 metres squared in terms of the prior approval application. So where it says 78, replace that with 93. And then on the proposal, where it says 93, replace that with 104. And that is detailed in the report under paragraph 6.9 and 6.11. So the report is correct, but that particular slide is incorrect. So apologies for that.
Yes. I can see Councillor Harris got in first and then Councillor Guglielmi.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Yeah, this is already has sort of some form of prior approval with the Q class. So we've seen a number of these come before us. I'm just relieved to see that there's actually a building of some shape on this one, and it's more than a rabbit hutch that we've seen before. So this one looks okay to me. But question item 4 on page 76, it talks about the cycle parking. Is that really a condition of this? It's got so much space there, they could put the bike wherever they want.
Thank you. Right, so that is a standard condition that highways do recommend with all new dwellings to ensure compliance with their parking standards. However, we do take your point in that the site has ample space to provide cycle storage, and usually the point of the condition is to secure cycle storage that is locked up and safe and secure, which could be a shed or, just. So if members are happy, we can remove that condition from the recommendation.
I see it. There's no point in putting it there, really. We're not going to condition a shed, the type of padlock it's got to have on it. So it was actually quite a relief, although it was a very long road to the site. It was actually flat, so that was good, because obviously compared to the previous site. But my concern with the access road was that it's grass and mud. Is that going to be have gravel put on it, so it's a gravel track, or is it going to be more suitable for vehicles that are I suppose if you're going to cycle, use a mountain bike, you'll be fine, but it would, to me, seem access would be quite arduous if over time.
Sorry, I'm just looking through the report. I was sure that I read that there would be surface treatment as part of the proposal, but that was my fault. I've misread that paragraph. But by all means, we can add a condition for the submission and approval of details of that surface to secure improvements.
So we can add that as a condition in terms of the access to come back to officers. There needs to be a suitable access for vehicles, really, because I don't think it is at this moment in time. I suppose when it had horses on site, it was fine, but vehicles. So if that's something that can be looked at, I have no real problems with this application whatsoever. To be honest, it's certainly in keeping with the area it's outside, it's excluded. Nobody can really see it from the roadside. I don't see any problems. When the time comes, I know it's early yet, but I'm quite happy to propose it. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. The only thing that upsets me or I'm worried about is the lovely land round the access. The access is a long access to where the vehicle, and there's a lot of nicely looked after land with a couple of beehives, and just wondered how that is protected for that becoming building land as well. Thank you.
So the red line of the application site doesn't include that section of the land. So there's nothing really to consider as part of this particular application. Should anything come forward in the future, obviously members would consider that at that time on its merits. But yeah, as you can see from the red light, I'm assuming you mean that section kind of within the square shape. Yeah. So as that falls outside the red line, it's not under consideration as part of this application. Thank you.
Interesting thing, I think, on that is our red line shows it going right across the driveway to Glendenning, but yours, I think, stops when it gets to the lane. So there's a slight discrepancy between our red line drawing and
Sorry, Chairman, which plan are you looking at? Which site plan are you looking at, sorry?
I'm looking at this one.
So that's a plotting of the site on our internal system, so that could be an error. We just need to go by the red line plan submitted with the application.
Thank you, Chairman. Sorry. Thank you, Chairman. I had a look at the site with everybody else today. Inside the red line, outside the red line, I won't look at. And as far as I could see, I couldn't see anything that was wrong. So therefore, we have a proposal, I believe, from Councillor Harris. So therefore, I shall second that proposal as per the officer's recommendation. Thank you, Chairman.
Good. Taken, in which case I'll take a vote on it straight away.
Good. I just want to clarify what
I was going to read the recommendation out, that it is as written on page 66. The conditions start on page 75, but my understanding is it would be less condition number 4, which is the cycle one.
Could I also clarify if you would like the addition of the condition regarding the surface treatment of the access as well? Yep.
Right. Proposer's happy with that. Seconder
Yes, Chairman, fine.
is happy with that. Right, okay. So that's what you're voting on. Page 66, recommendation, less condition 4 on page 75. Those in favour, please show. That is unanimous. In that case, that is approved.
Chair. Chair. Any chance of a comfort break?
Five-minute break.
Sure.
Right, colleagues, we're now on agenda item 8, which is A4 planning application 2200854. This is Golden Lane, Thorpe, and I think Mrs. Lang's got this one. She nods. She's trying to get it booted up. Good, thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Just wait for my assistant to bring up the presentation. Yeah. Okay, so we are looking at a planning application for retrospective change of use of a former agricultural building and associated hard standing to a commercial bus depot, which falls under a sui generis use. The site is Valley Farm, Golden Lane, Thorpe Soken. The extent of the site area is shown here in red, with access onto Golden Lane. The site amounts to approximately 0.9 hectares in size. The application specifically relates to one half of the former agricultural building and the areas of hard standing to the rear of that building. The applicant is Tendring Travel, and the application seeks retrospective permission for the change of use. The workshop occupies one half of the building, and the agent has advised that the other half of the building is used for storage of materials and equipment associated with a building company, which is separate to this application. The other barns in the centre of the site will remain in agricultural use. Just to clarify, the application is before members at the request of the planning manager, as set out in paragraph 9.12 of the officer's report. As Tendring Travel provides services used by this council for the reason of transparent decision making, the application is brought to members for determination. So the aerial image of the site shows the semi-rural location. The front of the site are a collection of buildings also in commercial use, which I believe are known as Valley Farm barns. And you can see the nearest residential property is approximately 70 metres to the south. And then also in view is another residential property known as Longshots Meadow, which is over 220 metres away to the east. This slide shows a view of that nearest neighbouring dwelling, viewed from the west of the site, with the site beyond to the rear of that property. So next up, we've just got a collection of site photos. The first images are views looking west and east from the access point. There's existing signage for the adjacent commercial premises and also a must turn left sign already in place for Tendring Travel. These images show views from the site access into the site. So that's the point of access, and then the access itself veers off to the west and follows around those agricultural buildings that you can see in the distance. These are images of the existing building. The application relates to that first half that you can see in the top image, and then the bottom image shows you the remainder of that building. So these are images taken from within the site, looking towards the main parking area to the rear of the building, where the extent of the hard standing is for the storage of the vehicles. And then there's also a couple of kind of temporary structures at the back just for ancillary offices. Again, this is a view from within the site looking back towards the building and the site access. So these are views from the rear of the site, looking back towards the site. So you can just see the roof of the building subject of the application, and also the existing agricultural building that sits alongside it. You will also note that there is existing landscaping to the rear of the site. And these are views from the eastern boundary looking towards the site, so you can see a couple of the existing vehicles parked in the background. I've included this plan just to provide clarity of where the public right-of-way runs alongside the site. I've marked the site with a star, and the public right-of-way runs around the existing property at the front and then along the site boundary to the west. So this plan is taken from the drainage strategy report, which shows the layout of the site and also the proposed drainage. Some is existing, and the pond in the northeast corner is the forms part of the proposed drainage strategy. So the report tells us that the site is served by private surface water drainage system, and the existing drainage network discharges to the nearby ditch to the northwest of the site. Just quickly go back one, Gary. It's just shown in yellow on that plan. If you can see it, there's just a yellow stripe. So the drainage strategy details, again, are taken from the report that accompanies the application. And this shows the pond details, which will be 1.5 metres deep, lined with topsoil, wild grass and matting. And from the pond, waters will discharge into the culvert ditch. So this next slide shows you the extent of highway land and applicant-owned land, together with the required visibility displays. A speed survey and junction assessment confirms the suitability of the access and its location in terms of achievable visibility in accordance with the surveyed speed of traffic along the lane as required by highway standards. The application includes highway improvements and mitigation in the form of a routing agreement, 4 passing bays along Golden Lane, which you can just see highlighted, sort of a greeny colour on this slide, and slow moving vehicles and vehicles turning warning signs on the westbound approach to the access. They are all within the extent of highway owned land and will be secured via a legal agreement with the Highway Authority. This slide shows the extent of the landscaping proposals to provide screening of the site, comprising grass seeding along the bunding to the perimeter, and new hedgerow planting and tree planting. So turning to the merits of the application, first of all, I just wanted to highlight the background and planning history for the site. So relevant planning history for the site includes a prior notification approval for a change of use from agricultural use to Class B8 storage and distribution, and that permission related to the entire building. Application in 2017 followed, seeking change of use of the building to a bus depot, so similar to what we're looking at today. Again, this related to the entire building and the hard surfacing to the rear. That particular application in 2017, the full application, was refused due to the harm to the character of the rural area and highway safety. This current application is supported by a landscape appraisal and transport statement aimed at addressing the previous reasons for refusal. So local and national planning policies support the principle of rural businesses, providing they do not adversely impact upon local amenity and highway safety. In terms of the landscape harm, the accompanying LVIA recognises there will be a minor degree of harm, but that the new soft landscaping shown here will provide a high degree of screening, and it will mean that the site is enclosed to an extent that parked vehicles will be barely visible in the landscape. The council's tree officer raises no objection, subject to conditions securing the proposed landscaping shown here. In terms of highways, the application is accompanied by a transport statement, speed survey, swept path junction assessment of Golden Lane and Landermere Road, and the Highway Authority raised no objection, subject to conditions securing the mitigation mentioned earlier, including the 4 passing bays along Golden Lane. In terms of the impact on residential amenities, as I mentioned, the nearest residential property is located approximately 70 metres to the south of the existing building. On the shared boundary to the north is mature vegetation in the form of trees and bushes, which screens the application site and screens the operations that take place on the site. Noise and disturbance to the amenity of the lane and its residents is somewhat reduced by the concentration of timings of the bus movements. Officers recognise that the associated movements will result in some harm to residential amenities due to the size of and frequency of the movements and the rural character of Golden Lane. However, the distance to residential dwellings, together with the proposed mitigation, the impact will not amount to a significant level of harm that would warrant refusal of planning permission. And just to note that no letters of objection have been received against the application. Ecology and biodiversity. The LVIA includes biodiversity enhancements, place services, ecology raise no objections, subject to securing the net gains for biodiversity in the form of a biodiversity enhancement strategy condition. The application is accompanied by a surface water drainage strategy report, which has been amended during the course of the application to address holding objections raised by the local lead flood authority. The proposed drainage strategy will improve and extend the existing private surface water drainage network to allow for the runoff from the gravel surface. The runoff will be directed to the new attenuation pond. The lead local flood authority have no objections, subject to conditions securing precise details of the scheme, its implementation and ongoing maintenance, and that no objection is against the most recent version of the strategy, which I think is revision C, scan to the file. Although we've had no objections from local residents, we do have an objection from Thorpe-le Soken Parish Council, and they raise concerns with the suitability of the location for such an operation due to highway safety and the rural character of Golden Lane. They also point out that nothing has changed since the previous refusal, so this new application doesn't warrant approval. However, as I've mentioned, this application is now supported by all of the relevant technical documents to address the landscape impact and highway concerns. So to conclude, the accompanying transport statements, together with the proposed mitigation, demonstrate that the development can achieve safe access and the local highway network can suitably accommodate associated traffic movements without resulting in any severe harm to highway safety. The accompanying LVIA recognises there will be a minor degree of harm, but that with new soft landscaping, this will sufficiently screen the site. The movements and repair works associated with the use will result in some harm to residential amenities due to the size of vehicles, frequency of movements and the rural character of Golden Lane. However, due to the distance, together with the proposed mitigation, that level of harm does not warrant refusal of planning permission on that ground. Matters of drainage, biodiversity, soft landscaping and the highway mitigation measures can be secured by conditions and the relevant section 278 legal agreements with the Highway Authority. So on that basis, officers recommend approval of the application, and just to point out that there is a few amendments on the update sheet that members need to take note of. Thank you.
Right, thank you very much. Now, I'm not sure whether Mr. Williams, who's the agent, or the owner, Mr. Bone, is wishing to share the 3 minutes, or if you wish, sir. Yeah. When you're ready, Mr. Williams, you'll find the microphone button on there. And when you're settled, that's it. You've got 3 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman, and good evening, councillors, and thank you for the opportunity to address you in respect of this application, which your officers are recommending for approval. I'm speaking on behalf of the landowner and applicant, Stratton Parker Farms, and I'm accompanied by Mr. Mark Bone, the owner and managing director of Tendring Travel, the bus company operating from the site. You have before you a comprehensive report from your officers and have received a presentation already this evening and seen the site earlier today, so I don't intend to repeat the contents of those reports, but do wish to highlight some key points and focus on some of those in particular. The application is for a retrospective change of use since Tendring Travel first began operating from the site in August 2017, having previously been based elsewhere in the village since 2005. Whilst the site benefits from B8 storage and distribution permission, it was subsequently brought to the owner's attention that the bus depot did not accord with a B8 use, so a retrospective application was invited and subsequently submitted, but unfortunately refused, citing grounds of highways and landscape impacts, as you've heard. This application therefore follows further engagement had with officers of both Tendring and the County Councillor's Highways Authority in the interim, seeking to resolve those issues raised in the previous refusal. You'll have noted from your site visit that there is an existing bund enclosing the rear of the site, and the current application proposes to introduce new hedge planting on top of the bund to provide additional screening of the site in the wider landscape and address previous concerns in this regard. Additionally, in response to the highways concerns, the applicant has committed to deliver passing bays and new signage along Golden Lane, whilst the operator is committed to ensuring all buses are routed to leave and return to the site from the east via Landermere Road, therefore avoiding the village. This is enforced by way of geofencing, with all buses tracked and monitored for compliance. As members will be aware, Tendring Travel are a well-established and respected local company who provide essential services to the local community, and it's therefore necessary for their base to remain in the locality in order to continue to efficiently serve their existing customer base, for them to remain accessible for their existing loyal staff, and to be close to their established supply chain in the local area. The company employs 25 to 30 local people, including drivers, mechanics and admin staff, and supports a number of local businesses for parts, servicing, MOTs, tyres and fuel. As concluded in the officer's report, there are no technical objections to the continued use of the site as a bus depot, nor any indication that it is an otherwise inappropriate location for Tendring Travel. Accordingly, I would invite you to support your officer's recommendation for approval of the application. Thank you for your time.
Lovely. Thank you very much. Yes, Councillor Alexander.
Thank you, Chair. Just 1 or 2 points, if I may. Is this thing on here? On the first part of this, page 82, in its executive summary, it goes through a brief explanation of how we've arrived here. Just to get absolutely clear in my mind, in 2017, an application was refused. In 2018, the same, and then in 2018, I noticed one has been also withdrawn, but it seems to be back to front for some reason. Is that correct?
Right, I'm just going to go to the planning history section of the report. So the prior notification application was submitted under reference 17000778, and then the full application followed, and that was 1702146. I can check the determination dates for you. So the previous application for the change of use, the same as what we're looking at now, that was refused on the 8th of June 2018. So the reference number is 2017, but by the time the decision was made, it was 2018.
So up till this moment in time, the activity of the tendering travel has been carried out without planning permission. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
The other thing I'd like to bring up, if I may, is on the conditions. And I'm looking at condition 13 on page 103. And it talks about the level of treatment and the runoff, including bus washing and the washing of mechanical residuals for repair in line with a simple index approach on chapter 26 of the SUDS manual C73 or 53, is it? Is it 753? I think, isn't it? Yes, that's correct. All this will be solved then with the coming of this this pond, yes?
Yes, so during the course of the application, with consultation with the lead flood authority, the attenuation pond has been added to the scheme to account for the area of hard standing that is in place, which facilitates the use of the site. So that amendment to the drainage strategy and amendment to the red line and inclusion of the attenuation pond is all as a result of that consultation with the flood authority. So that is now considered to be an acceptable strategy for the size of the site and the area of hard standing.
So by definition, there isn't much definition here before me, at least, of this pond, because it's interesting me somewhat. Continuation on this basis within this pond, will it be filled with goldfish and a few weeds, water weeds to make it look pretty, or will it be properly piped and lined so that it will withhold, or will any residual chemicals that come from washing, will that seep into the ground beneath?
I think I covered that in the presentation. Let me just double check for you. Yeah, so the pond is 1.5 metres in depth, and it's going to be lined with topsoil, wild grass and matting. The pond waters will discharge to the culvert ditch. So there are a number of existing drainage routes and pipes on the site, which will be improved and also enhanced with the addition of the pond, and they will essentially work together.
Well, thank you for repeating that from your presentation. At my age, you tend to miss a few things.
Thank you, Chairman. I know this area quite well. I only live down the road in Tendring Village, so I use this area quite a lot, and I must admit I didn't actually realise they were there because it's so well hidden. Yeah, I'd like to talk about the highways issues and road safety in particular, and I note that a couple of the objections by Thorpe Parish Council are the poor surfacing and the narrow width of the road. Can you confirm that, or that there is an agreement with Essex Highways that they're going to have passing points, and if the committee are mindful of approving this, how soon after approval will those passing points be built? And also, I witnessed today quite large stretches of Golden Lane that's actually been resurfaced and patched quite professionally by Highways, which was remarkable, which is quite good. Although there are some cavernous potholes still remaining. Why they missed those out, I don't know. So I would urge, in any event, Highways to sort those out. And as a final point, talking about highway safety, are we aware of any accidents? I believe that they've been here for six years in this site. Thereabouts. Have there been reports of any accidents whatsoever involving these buses? And I'll come back. I've got other questions as well. Thank you.
I may have to ask you to repeat a couple of those questions if I forget them. But so first point, there is a swept path analysis for the junction of Golden Lane and Landmere Road, which shows that it can facilitate the larger vehicles without churning up any of the grass verges. The passing bays will be delivered through a legal agreement with the Highway Authority, and on the update sheet you will see that we've allowed a bit more time in terms of the submission of that. So in the report it asks for 3 months, and in the update sheet we've allowed 6 months, just because we're reliant on the Highway Authority and their processes, so we need to have enough time to actually get that legal agreement and everything sorted to be able to provide the passing bays. There has been a report of one accident, but this doesn't, as far as I'm aware, it doesn't actually relate to any kind of conflict with the vehicles in terms of the bus vehicles on this particular site. That has come directly from the Highway Authority, so they haven't actually specified in their response what that collision was. But I'm hoping that if it did relate to a bus, they would have clarified that point and they would have taken that into consideration as part of their consultation response. But I think based on all of the speed surveys and the transport assessment that's been submitted with the application, regardless of that one collision, the speed surveys, the visibility displays that are going to be provided to account for the movements and the speed of Golden Lane in this particular area, it meets the highway requirements and they don't raise an objection to that. I think that's everything you asked.
I think you got that spot on. I mean, my local knowledge is that I don't recall any accidents on buses or with buses. The applicant also mentioned about sort of turning one way. So as they come out of the site, they always turn left, and they mentioned something about geofencing. For the benefit of the committee, are you able to sort of tell us what geofencing is?
Bear with.
If you want me to tell you, I can tell you.
So just to go back to the turning left, the sign that's already in place, I think, Tension Travel are operating with that, and that's why the swept path analysis has been provided for that junction, because that's the way they will go, and that will be further secured as part of this permission if members are minded to approve through the condition for the routing strategy with the Highway Authority.
Would you like me to help you with the geofencing? Okay, I must admit, it was sort of a loaded question. I'm in the motor trade. For the benefit of everyone, I'm in the motor trade myself, not in this area, but my recovery truck also has a system on it which has geofencing. Basically, it's like a tracker, if you like, which is, so you've got a connected vehicle, and what can happen, you set areas where you don't want that vehicle to go to. Like in my instance, my geofence is an area around where my recovery driver lives. So if it goes in that area, guess what? It sends me a text message. Sneaky, hey? Right? And I believe what I've been told is that if the buses turn right, it will ring the director's phone or send them a text message to let him know so they can do it. So the point is, it's a road safety feature which does work, so they cannot turn right without the owner knowing, so they can manage it. That was what I was going to get to. So I think in terms of employees, if you can you clarify the amount of employees that the site has, please?
Do you mean in terms of people that actually work on the site permanently, in terms of the workshop itself?
How many people does this business employ?
Let me just double check, bear with.
Can I help you out on that one as well?
Sorry, we're just trying to find the right section of the application form. So there's full-time, 30 members of staff. Yep, full-time, 30 members.
Thank you. We'll settle at that. I know we're early, but when the time comes, I am more than happy to propose acceptance of this, and I would like to say more. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Just one question for the officer. Obviously, this site has been operating without planning permission since 2017 when it was refused. So this will regularise, if that's a word, regularise the position should we approve. So I'm presuming that there was enforcement action or enforcement were involved at a stage during this, because I noticed it was mentioned in the planning statement that was submitted with the application. So I just want to confirm that by bringing this forward, this regularises and stops anything further going on should we approve. Can you just confirm that for me? Thank you.
Yes, that is the case. So this has resulted as from enforcement, so we were aware that it was happening, and this application will not only regularise that, but also give us further planning controls to make sure that it operates in the most safe and efficient way in terms of highway safety and secures those mitigation measures that aren't currently there.
Thank you for that. I think it'll improve the site, what I've seen with what's proposed. Chairman, I'm quite happy when the time comes to second Councillor Harris's proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. If we've got nobody else, then I'd just like to sort of summarise really that, in my opinion, this is a local company that employs somewhere in the region of 30 people. I didn't have it as quite as high as that, but it's 30 people. And it's a business that we need to support. I think I'm a big supporter of small business. I think with any application, as we've said numerous times, there's always harm. But there's also, you have to balance that with benefit. I think the amount of harm that this will create is absolutely minimal. And if you look at the positives, there is local employment. And the owner told me today that there are local people and they all live in the tendering area. There, of course, benefits to the local economy, all the parts purchased, spare parts for the vehicles, etc., all purchased within a local area. Local services also purchased, fuel is purchased locally. It has an impact on the local economy, and I think that we need to be doing everything we possibly can. This is a business that also has suffered, as all sort of bus companies like this have, for the last 2 years in COVID. And, you know, for us the impact of turning this application down may be that this business is forced to possibly close or certainly reduce in size to go elsewhere. So I think that we should be supporting this business as much as we possibly can. And I would like to propose acceptance, please, then. Thank you.
A seconder, so seconder doesn't wish to say anything. No, indicates. In that case, we'll go straight to the vote. The recommendation is shown on page 83, with a condition shown on 100 to 103 with some more informatives. But subject to that, those of you who are going to vote, and we'll do it by show of hands again. Those in favour, please show.
Chairman, sorry to interrupt you, but we have got an amended version of
that. Yes, you have some notes on the update. So,
do you want me to go through those, Chairman?
Yes, please.
Do you want me to go through them? Yeah. Okay, so just the first point of clarification, I've already covered that in the presentation, but just to on public record again. And section 4 of the consultations, just a correction to the order of which those comments were received. And as mentioned earlier, we've amended a couple of the conditions. So condition 2, we've allowed a bit more flexibility in terms of the opening hours. And also a little bit more flexibility in terms of outside of those hours for private functions and airport runs, things like that, that Tendring Travel also offer. And then condition 8 and 9, as I mentioned earlier, is changed from within 3 months to within 6 months. And just where the numbering needed to be corrected, 11 to 15 will now read 10 to 14.
Good. No queries on that. So, as I was saying, shall we show a show of hands, please? Those in favour, please show. That is unanimous. That is approved. Thank you. Right. We move off to the TDC application, land adjacent to Lotus Way, Brooklands, Jaywick. And this is the site we went to this morning, where we had to imagine where the site would have be applied to the building when the building was finished. So I think Alison's going to get this one. Yeah, over to you.
Thank you, Chairman. This application is for advert consent for a building name sign on the west elevation of a building in Jaywick. The site is adjacent to Lotus Way and Brooklands on the corner there. It's a Tendring District Council building, which was approved in 2021 for business units, covered market, public toilets, community garden and public realm on that site. The building is currently under construction, and we could see that today. The size of the sign that is being proposed is proportionate to the size of the buildings and will not have an adverse impact on the highway safety or public or neighbouring amenity. There are no objections to the application and therefore it's recommended for approval. I think there's another site photo and some site photos of it under construction, and it will be on the elevation facing Tamarisk Way. I think the end is the sign itself. Yeah, so that's the sign itself. It will be red lettering. It's not illuminated. And as you can see, it's proportionate to the size of the building and shows what the building will be. Okay, thank you. Yeah.
Right. We have poor Barbara's been sitting there patiently in the draft all evening, so welcome to her to describe to us all about this sign. I personally will say if she can talk about why it's called Sunspot, that's another matter, but it doesn't really apply.
Thank you, Chairman. So the sign we've actually got on the side of the building, so it actually faces up Tamarisk Way. So the idea is that anyone coming into Brooklands will actually see the sign. That's going to be over the cafe. So it's going to be a real focal point for residents and for people coming into the area. The reason we've called it Sunspot is a nod to the iconic space that was there already and really to give it a community feel. So, you know, it shows that we're keeping contact with the community and for the success it had in its heyday. And we just wanted to keep that bit of familiarity more than anything. So, yeah, as I said, the sign shouldn't pose any problems. We've not illuminated it. It's not going to be directly affecting the new builds. But we just wanted it to be bright and you know, people be able to see it from a distance, so it actually draws people into the area.
Right, thank you very much. Councillor Alexander.
Thank you, Chair. It is my understanding, I could be wrong here, that there used to be a small gauge train that used to run regularly from, and they were rare, very, very rare pieces of equipment. They were Sentinels, and I believe that one of them is still in action now in Norfolk, and one of them was called the Sunspot. And they were owned by the same family, run by the same family that owned the holiday camp down in Upper Dovercourt, or the lower part of Dovercourt. Warner Brothers had some input into them as well. And where the new buildings are now, to the right of it is where the ticket office stood. So you can see massive changes that are taking place. I think this is a wonderful opportunity for that area. It will greatly improve because you're bringing improvement into it, and people will demand greater things as they want it to improve. And it will, as I say, it will only do good things for that area. So with that, if I may, when you're ready, I think I'll approve the recommendation as laid out.
Right, thank you very much, Councillor. I'm getting told off by my Vice Chairman, who's already got a list of 4 other speakers. But it starts with Councillor Guglielmi. Val.
No, sorry, you've already answered my question. I wanted to know why the name Sunspot. That was all I got. So, thank you for answering.
And next was Councillor Harris.
Thank you, Chairman. I have lots and lots of questions on this one. I have a whole list, but unfortunately I've left my list at home. So I would like to second this one and let's go straight to the vote. And this whole development is marvellous for Jaywick, and we're authorising a sign tonight. So yes, let's please just go straight to the vote. Thank you.
I agree with everything that's just been said, and I'd like to third it, please.
Get to the post. Get to the vote.
And thank you, Barbara, for being so patient. So, colleagues, that does bring us to the end of this meeting. And can I wish you all the compliments of the season? I'm not sure when our date of our next meeting is, but let's have a look. It's January the 17th. Is the next meeting, so hope you can all make it, and of course my greetings also go to the officers, of course. So thank you very much. We shall now make our way home to have our second mince pie, perhaps. Yeah.